What's up, mortgage coach community? Dave Savage. I am sitting down with Dave Childers with Keeping Current Matters. What's up, Dave?
Hey, Dave. It's good to be with you, and excited about this conversation, and grateful for the mortgage coach community and just being able to share what we're doing at Keeping Current Matters and all the research that we're finding.
Well, dude, I appreciate you doing this. I have been advocating now for over a month that mortgage coach loan officers are partnering with real estate agents, and they're doing, and I don't care what platform, Zoom, Facebook Live, StreamYard, but they're getting on platforms with an agent, and they're bringing the local news around home ownership, whatever that is. And when I did my interview with Tom Ferry, first of all, you guys got a lot of shout outs. So I did this interview with Tom Ferry recently, and I asked him, hey, Tom, do you think it's a good idea for loan officers and realtors to be partnering? And I would say it would be safe to assume he went on a rant and saying it's absolutely something they should be doing. And he also told a couple stories. He gave a few headlines. So guys, check out that interview. I'll put a link down below. But Tom Ferry was advocating that not only you do these, but you use Keeping Current Matter content. So I thought, hey, mortgage coach community, you're going to hear it from Dave Childers. And I'm going to also try to sprinkle in, how would you use Keeping Current Matters? How would you use Mortgage Coach? And how would you create an event that not only blows people's mind, but it generates leads? You get families that want to sell calling you. You get families that want to buy calling you. And you get families that are saying, hey, I might want to stay, but I want you to do that move up analysis for me. So Dave, with that said, why don't you share what you think loan officers should be doing at a high level? And I know you've got some slides to share. Let's rock it out.
Well, that you mentioned the interview you did with Tom, and I was watching that as he was doing it. And, here's the thing I would say that's important about that is Tom's belief and passion about that. And you and I have known him a long time, and so many people in the industry, as loan officers and realtors have been impacted by his coaching and leadership, is he believes passionately that the educated agent and the educated loan officer together make a dramatic difference. And I mean, Dave, I think about your career in mortgage coach. I mean, that has been at the center of advocating for homeowners for so long. And so, we're grateful for the way that he, uses that data that we produce, but it is the driving force of the educated agent, the educated loan officer that's then able to educate the consumer wins in today's market. Okay. And, as we start this conversation, I would argue right now that now more than ever, this is important. Why? Because we're heading into a time into this fall, and certainly we're looking across the country right now and seeing some different things happening with the coronavirus, things changing, and the economy starting to change and rebound, and a number of different things happening. We're going to talk about unemployment, like you mentioned, but here's the reality of today. You mentioned the goal and the job of loan officers and agents across this country is to get on Zoom, get on platforms, and deliver what's happening. Because the reality is, as we head into probably the most highly contested election in this nation's history, both sides will use information to make a case to say, hey, things are way worse than you think they are, or you know what, things are way better than they're saying they are. And getting the truth out is going to be extremely important coming in the coming months, if it's not extremely important today. And so with that as a backdrop, that's how I would set the conversation up. Because
I want to give one more backdrop before you start sharing what you think folks should have. I want to put it into three buckets for you guys. So right now, every family in America is getting a lot of national news. What's happening nationally? Mm-hmm. They're hearing about it politically. They're hearing about it financially. They're hearing about it economically at a national level. And then they are getting some local, but guys, let's face it, people aren't tuning into local TV shows, and a lot of the different sources that are coming in are confusing. But here's what nobody's getting. They're not getting it personal. So I want you to listen to this. Dave's going to provide some national numbers, economically, real estate. This is where when you partner with a real estate agent, have them make it local. So you might come in and you give this, use Keeping Current Matters as a mortgage professional. Hey, nationally, this is what's going on. Realtor comes in locally. This is how it connects and kind of localizes it. And then guys together at the end, you personalize it. Now, what does this mean to you? Based off of your goals, your assumptions, because you're hearing this news and some people are hearing it and going, I want to do X, and I believe appreciation rates are going to be Y, and other people have a different opinion. So make sure when you're delivering these events, it's national, local, and you close with the personal. So Dave, let's almost take that format. I think you start sharing some national perspectives, and then let's kind of weave in, like if a realtor's listening to this, we'll kind of weave in like, hey, realtor, you should find the local version of this number and the local version of this number. And then we'll kind of give them some advice on how to close it out and make it personal.
Yeah,
Sound good?
for sure. Yeah, sounds great. Let's hop into that. So the first big issue that we'll talk about, Dave, is just unemployment. It's a big question across the country, and ultimately how it's going to affect the housing market. So let me share a little bit of information, kind of to your point of just national data coming out of the most recent June unemployment report, and then we'll kind of talk through that. Okay. And if I were to sum up the most recent unemployment report, the consensus was that just over 3 million jobs would be added, and yet 4.8 million jobs were added, almost 50% more than experts were projecting. So that's a good thing, right? That we're seeing jobs come back into the market after the economy was essentially pressed, the pause button, and now folks are able to get back to doing what they're doing. We know those jobs are coming back in the areas of hospitality and leisure. You know, we talked about earlier, and you and I even talked about it on some of the other recordings we did, this being a service sector led recession. You know, those that are in the service sector, and we see, of those 4.8 million jobs that come out, largely led by those in leisure and hospitality. Think about that as, maybe people in the restaurant business, those that are in the business of, taking care of folks that way. The good news of this unemployment report is that the unemployment rate in June fell to 11.1%, coming off of May of 13.1%, and certainly the high in April. So we're seeing this decline in unemployment, meaning more people getting their jobs back, and certainly more people coming into the market that are available or can buy a home, can transact a home purchase, which is a good point. Now, I want to temper all of this information with, these are real issues, Dave. You brought up a great point of locally what's going on with someone in your community, or a business in your community, or if you live in a community that's highly dependent upon travel and destination services that may be more impacted. We want to be very mindful of that. But as we look across the country, jobs are coming back, and that is a good thing.
Hey, Dave, two things. One, are you going to make these slides available to our community? Are we going to be able to get a copy of these?
Sure, I'll get those over to you so you guys have access to these.
Okay, guys, so these will be in our Facebook group in the files section. And if you're watching this in YouTube, I'll also put a link to a download to this. I also want to make sure you guys notice that at the bottom right-hand corner of all these, there's a credible source. And I want to just call out that, because I think in today's world, and I don't think I'm just speaking for myself, I've never been more thoughtful about, okay, what's the source of that data? And what's the source of that media player? That person that's giving that perspective, what's the source? And so I recommend that as you have these, you always source them with the most well-known authoritative partner. So, when you have a brand or a source that the consumer doesn't recognize, it doesn't help. Like when you can come and say, hey, here's just this data from this obvious quality source, and I'm just delivering it to you in a way that's national, local, and then I'm helping you personally make a decision. So I just think that's an important thing to note.
It's tremendously important.
Awesome.
I would say in today's culture, the last thing you want to do is put something out in the market that you're not educated on first. I always think back to Dave, to our good friend Jim McMahon, where he says having a relevant market opinion, and that's what we're talking about developing. Let me show you one other thing on here, and I'm sharing not in a presentation mode, so I can do a couple of things here. In case your members know this, but if you go into the notes of each slide, we give you the link to the data. And there are things that you're interested in. I would highly encourage folks to go back and look at that and review, the employment situation report, which is what comes out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where we get the monthly unemployment number. But that's a huge point.
Hey, before you go off of that huge point, and dude, first of all, you and Steve and the Keeping Current Matters have just been so generous. You guys always give great feedback. And I think a lot of you that watch this know that they have a blog and you can check that out. But guys, the premium version of Keeping Current Matters it's just the biggest no-brainer in the industry. And that was just to be a reminder. I mean, not only are they constantly sifting all of the headlines, all of the news, and saying, hey, what do people in housing, if you're in real estate and mortgage and you want to help families make educated and confident decisions, what are the, out of the thousands of things that we could be covering, what are the dozen that you should? And then they're breaking it down, saying, hey, this month, this is what we think the insights are. And then they're even giving you single breadcrumbs to, like, this is the thing you need to read. So that you can literally, from Steve Harney, who's been doing this his whole life, and a company, you're just getting the most curated and the most relevant content. So again, I know it's a bit of a pitch to sign up for Keeping Current Matters, but I really do believe if you're a mortgage or real estate professional and you want to help families make confident, informed decisions, they need to get a total cost analysis and mortgage coach. And you need to be powered intellectually from Keeping Current Matters. And you need to use those slides when you're doing one-to-many events. So anyways, bro, I just couldn't help myself.
No,
keep it rocking.
Thank you. So let's talk just a minute about, there was this idea we talked about misclassification that's been kind of floated around in some of these monthly unemployment reports, and it's been brought up by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I clipped a quote out of here just to discuss real quick. It says, regardless of the assumptions we might make about misclassification, the trend in unemployment rate over the periods in question is the same. The rate increased in March and April, and eased in May, and then now we know in June. And so we've seen unemployment go up, and now we're starting to see unemployment go down, which is a good thing overall for the economy. And the Wall Street Journal came out and said, U.S. job growth surged last month, underscoring the economy's capacity for a quick rebound, and if businesses continue to reopen and consumers regain confidence. Now, the caveat there is that this recent spike in the coronavirus, and the question, could it undermine some of the trends captured in these jobs reports? And so we're gonna watch that and say, okay, what is happening economically across this country? But I can say this: it won't be like what happened in March when we were caught by surprise. But we are watching that to say what is going to happen across the country with some of these new, more recent spikes. The Wall Street Journal has been following another story that we've brought to Keeping Current Matters members. And this is the idea of core unemployment. And this, Dave, I would say is a little bit more sobering data. And it says here, as temporary unemployment drops, permanent job loss keeps rising. And a core unemployment rate, which takes out temporary layoffs and then adds back in unemployed that haven't been searching for a job, actually rose. It jumped to 5.9% in June from 5% in May, from Indeed economist Jed Kolko. Now, in this, we want to keep an eye on this because we're seeing temporary unemployment come down, but we're starting to see this core unemployment rate rise, and you can see it visually right here. Now, if there is a silver lining to this, core unemployment is not near where it was in April 2010. You can see on the far left there when you think about the Great Recession. And yet it started to rise. So as we start to sum up what is happening with unemployment across the country, we can see unemployment's coming down. We're starting to see core unemployment raise just a bit. And then there are these questions of, is this like, 2008, is this like the, been floated in the recent months? It's like the Great Depression. And we always go back to this slide where we're looking at depth and length of unemployment. And this gives you just a great visual picture of where we stand as compared to the Great Recession and Great Depression. And this slide shows from where we started as an unemployment percentage. And think about this in February before we got into March and realized the coronavirus. How long does it take for us to get back to that point? And forecasters are saying in this situation, about 4 years is what they're forecasting, where it took 9 years in the Great Recession and 12 years in the Great Depression to get back to that point. So while people are drawing correlations to there, you can just look at it visually and say, okay, look, we're seeing higher unemployment for a short term here than the Great Recession, but not anywhere near as long. And it just brings context to that conversation around unemployment and what's happening there. So I want to pause there for a second because it leads to another question that I want to address in just a minute.
Oh, so you want me to comment on that? Sorry.
Well, you don't have to, but that's just kind of a summation of what's going on in unemployment. And I want to give that a little bit more as if you were giving a presentation right now along with a Realtor partner, what we want to do is educate people. And I'm not saying you may want to use all those slides or a portion of them, but give people an idea what's going on with unemployment so they understand what is happening versus being informed maybe just by a headline that's built to cause fear or confusion.
No doubt. I mean, but here's my goal, mortgage coach community. I have some beliefs on what would be the ultimate loan officer, realtor, Facebook Live educational event. We've got the most amazing community. We have Dave Childers here giving us ideas and leadership from Keeping Current Matters. I'm currently collaborating with Josh Metal. I was on the phone with a realtor of his, Jake Green, and we were talking about an event that I'm going to collaborate with them where they're going to bring leadership. They're going to promote it on Facebook. They're going to put ad dollars around it. They're going to get as many families into this collaboration between Jake and Josh that I'm going to help facilitate. I'm going to do the same thing with Dan because he was on the interview. He actually led the interview with Tom Ferry that put a lot of inspiration around this, but I want to know what you're doing. So if you are doing events like this and you have an outline that you're proud of, like I think, we're killing it. Here's the headline we're using. Here's the outline we're using. Share what you're willing to share in comments below. And also know that I'm going to be bringing some examples of what I think is some great leadership to you guys from Josh, from Dan. I'm planning to do something with the CEO of Mortgage Unlimited on the East Coast, Justin. So guys, stay tuned and please share. Let's all get better together. So Dave, what else? So we've covered employment. What are some other important categories?
Yeah, I want to go into this, but I want to pause 1 second for this on unemployment, because the question that now comes up is, hey, we're seeing a lot of unemployment. We're still at 11.1%. Forbearance is a thing that has been put in place to help people weather this storm that have been impacted financially. But I think a lot of people are still wondering, okay, with the end of forbearance, are we about to see a rash of foreclosures? And you may be listening to this and think, well, I don't think that's possible. And you may know that, but I would encourage you to step into that conversation because a lot of consumers are asking that question right now. Is what is this going to mean for foreclosures? Now, that's going to have a downstream impact on if we were to see a rush of foreclosures on pricing, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But there are a lot of people saying right now, you know what, I may just wait and see how all this plays out because I'm concerned. So I want to address that real quick, Dave, from some Black Knight data.
So real quick, before you pull your slides up again, I also want to make note when you're doing these live events, you notice that Dave went from showing slides, showing data, giving perspective, and he took the slide down and he showed up with empathy and he is bringing up the topic the way that the consumer would. So when you're doing these events, don't just turn on the slides and keep the slides going and the data going. Go from I'm showing you data to I'm connecting with you in a personal way. So there should be multiple transitions of sharing your desktop, not sharing your desktop. And like I gave you that bucket, national, local, personal, I want to also give you another frame, which is data, insight, and empathy. And
Yeah.
what Dave just did is he gave data, he gave insight, and then he put the camera on, and he brought empathy and connection. So I wanted to call that out. I thought it was great leadership on your part, Dave.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very, and I appreciate that, but I think it's a very real question. I think it's a logical question that somebody would ask. But let's look at what Black Knight just came out with. And this is interesting data. It says, of all active forbearances which are past due on their mortgage, 77% have at least 20% equity in their home. Significant equity in their home. You can play this graph out here if you see the first orange bar looking left to right at 13%, and say 90% of people that are past due in their mortgage that are in active forbearance have at least 10% equity in their home. Why is this important? It's important for this reason. Black Knight sums it up in the study. They say the high level of equity provides options for homeowners, policymakers, mortgage investors, and servicers in helping to avoid downstream foreclosure activity and default-related losses. So while we see unemployment coming down but still high, we have this question of forbearance, and we see that 77% have 20% equity. I mentioned 90% have at least 10% equity. Why is this important? And I would think about it this way. If you owned a $400,000 house today and you were in forbearance and facing a tough time, and you had 20% equity in your home, that's $80,000. What would you do? Would you let that home go into foreclosure? Or would you move to sell and do that in a way that you could put real money in your pocket? And so based on what we see with equity, and we've talked about the strong equity position and the way consumers have used the equity in their homes and stewarded the equity in their homes leading up to this time, it's not likely that we would see a wave of foreclosures. Are there some that may fall into that? Yeah, and we certainly hate that and don't want to see that. But for it to be a 2008 scenario, again, it's just not, when we look at the data, it's just not plausible. I would even go further, and I've got a slide in here, I won't bring it up, but the CFPB has given a directive to homeowners that are still in trouble when forbearance wraps that they can ask for an extension and get an extension just by saying I'm still in a financial hardship. So I think there are provisions by the federal government, by banks, that they want to help people work things out. They don't want to see 2008 all over again. And just like we know that in our business, consumers are wondering that question, and a lot of times making a decision not to transact based on a fear or being misinformed in that way.
Love it. Love it. So remember, guys, I want to know, what are the categories? What are the insights that you're sharing? Any slide decks that you're willing to share? And so think about what we just went through. This would be the national update.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, Dave, but I think, when you're breaking this into it's for families, and it's either a lunch and learn, or it's kind of like a happy hour right after work.
Right.
How long do you think the whole briefing should be? Like 30 minutes to an hour? Do you think an hour works? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think if it's live, and a lot of people are doing things via Zoom right now. I think in that half an hour to 45 minutes is a good time on this. And I'm probably going a little bit deeper in some of this data than you would probably want to do with people in a setting like this. And I'm doing that for a specific purpose, to give you a little bit more of the background. And like Dave said, you'll have access to these slides, but being educated in that to be able to handle questions. Because what I will tell you, and I present this information a fair amount, is it causes questions. And that's what we want to do, is step into those questions and say, okay, let's look at your unique situation and help you make the best decision for your family, or answer the question that you have.
Yeah, and remember, guys, this is a teach the teachers, a lead the leaders event. So we're going long. I think more than 30 minutes. Again, mortgage coach community, I'm looking forward to hearing results. Hey, I did one and I did it for 45 minutes and it was perfect. I did one, I did it for a half hour, it was perfect. I did it and it did it for an hour, it was perfect. I want to also remind you that these videos that you're creating with these realtors, it's a great video to not only stream live, but then to put into your YouTube channels, put into your other social media channels. And then it's great to create micro content from it, where you take some of the 30-second, the 1 minute, the 3-minute sound bites, and you create content. And so think about it. What kind of leadership and what kind of value would it be if you partnered with one of the most respected agents in your market, and you guys put an event together? You did it on Zoom or StreamYard, you recorded it, and you got leads and loans and sales and listings, and then you created micro content with it. Guys, how valuable would that be to your value prop with other realtors if you were the loan officer that could do this better than anyone else in your market in a way that generates leads? So I think it's a big idea. So we've gone national. We've given you some leadership on, now you're a realtor. I would say, like, loan officer, you do the national update. Realtor comes in, does the local update. Dave, anything else you want to do on the national piece before we kind of get into some of those chunks on local and personal? Anything else?
You know, I think the other piece that's local, and we can do it now, Dave, or we could do it literally on another session, is coming out of that is what's happening with pricing. Okay, now we can bring a good national picture to pricing, and ultimately pricing is going to be determined by supply and demand, but that is the exact piece to step into the local conversation, to say what is happening with supply, with inventory locally, what is happening with demand locally, because that will give us the best picture of where pricing is going to head.
Love it. Love it. Well, why don't you cover a few more, call it national or local news pieces, and then I'll come in and let's try to wrap it up within 5-10 minutes here. So maybe give 3 or 4 more minutes, a couple more slides, and then I'll wrap it up around how to now take this. And here's where everybody misses it, and turn it into a call to action. You know, as Renee Rodriguez would say, we're gonna frame, we're gonna message, and then we're gonna tie it down. And I want you to think of personalization as the tie down. So rock it out.
Yeah. So I think, Dave, you're the way you set this up to say, okay, let's look nationally, but let's look here locally where we're at is kind of how we frame this up to say, okay, nationally, we just talked about what's going on with employment across this country, specifically, you know, those that are unemployed. Now let's talk about the downstream effect to house prices, because that's what most people are going to say. We're going to wait and see, you know, how this all shakes out before we make a decision. So I want to share real quick what experts are saying about home prices. And I pulled 9 different projections, popped them into a slide here. And it really shows, Dave, a large range of projections on the future of home prices. Now, I will say the majority of these are positive on home prices. But you see CoreLogic came out here recently and said in a 12-month rolling window, kind of looking forward into the middle of next year, they're projecting for home price depreciation. But you can see where they're clearly the outlier in that. But if we're going to talk about home price appreciation, what we have to look at is supply and demand. That's what's going to drive pricing going forward. And again, the area that we can deliver on local data relative to that. So the first, I want to show 2 slides here relative to how you can communicate this to the people you're talking to. The first is strictly inventory and where is it at. In this slide here that we create at Keeping Current Matters is the year-over-year change in listings. That's compared to new listings coming on the market compared to total listings. And in green, you see new listings coming in the market, and you see that trickling up, meaning we're bringing new listings to the market, which is a good thing. We're bringing more supply to the market. And then in the orange, you see total listings going down. What does that mean? That literally means that, I'll give you an analogy. If you owned a store, you can't stock the shelves quick enough for the number of people that are buying it. Let's think about toilet paper, you know, just a few months ago. They can't get it on the shelf fast enough before people come in and they buy it. And so while we're bringing listings to market, the overall amount of listings is currently decreasing. Think about that for a minute in that analogy. And so as you see in you know, the supply side of economics, when there are fewer goods on a market, it's going to drive that price up. And so that's where I would bring in your local listing information so that you can say, okay, what is going on with that, not only across the country, but in the area that you live, in the market that you serve. So the supply side is going to dominate that from a pricing side. Now the flip side of that, I'll say this real quick, Dave, and I'll turn it back over to you, is demand. What's driving demand right now? White hot interest rates. I mean, people are literally going, we can now afford a home, we can now transact and buy something that maybe we couldn't, and people are going, now is the time. So we're seeing demand coming in here, largely driven by interest rates, but other things as well. Desire for different things that are important in a home now that weren't maybe important 4 months ago or when we started the year. And so when we look at pricing relative to supply and demand, we have to look at both of those things and say, okay, where do we believe it's going?
Shay, pull up your slides one more time and go to slide 19. It's got the big national number on it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because guys, it kind of nets it out. Like nationally, this is what things look like. And I want you to have a companion to this that says, and locally. So loan officer, you're giving the update. The only thing that I can really, I think you covered unemployment big time.
Yep.
You talked about appreciation rates big time. I do think anybody listening to this, you should speak to how much equity people have in their homes. And so anyways, I just wanted you to show that. You go ahead and pull that down. So
yeah, it shows just the amount of listings. I mean, I'm sorry, this is change in viewings. It's demand. It shows demand and how it's up year over year nationally, and then across every region of the country that Showing Time surveys. And so we know the demand's out there. We know the supply is low, and that's keeping these this upward pressure on prices across the country. So
yeah, no doubt. So I want to give you guys the whole playbook. So that was some national slides, some national ideas, some presentation ideas. I want to remind people, when you take Keeping Current Matter slides, I'm sure you're going to see Josh Metal and what he does. You got to remember, like, Josh is reading Keeping Current Matters, but he's making it his.
Yeah.
And so, like, he is making it his. So it's important that you make it yours. If you have a slide and you don't understand it at a level in which you can teach it, it's not going to go great. So make sure you do the reading you need, you do the leadership you need so that you own what you're going to present. Then the realtor steps up, does their local update. Let's just say 10 to 15 minutes national, 10 minutes local, and now leave time for how are we going to personalize this. And what I'm going to recommend to folks is that you've got at least 2, no more than 3 total cost analysis that you're going to pull up. And some ideas would be, for anybody that is a renter thinking about buying, you've got a rent versus own, where you can talk about that. Although if you've promoted this to homeowners and 90% of the people on this are homeowners, you may want to do the rent versus own not at all, or you might want to do it last because they may have kids and people that are doing it. You want to have a move up analysis, and different strategies around moving up. Because I do believe there are a lot of families out there that have enough equity in their home that they could sell it. They could take a lot of the proceeds and put it in the bank and improve their cash position, which I know a lot of people want to do in today's market. And they could buy a bigger home.
Sure.
And if they believe that appreciation rates on a macro level are, they may go down, they may be, who knows what's going to happen over the next year, but they believe over 3 years, 5 years, the future is bright. Great time, possibly the best time ever to do a move up. And let's face it, a lot of folks want to move up for lifestyle reasons right now. Bigger kitchens, big enough house to have a gym and a work area. There's just a lot of that. And so we want you guys to do this in the personalization, the tie down. And in some ways, the most important part of it is where you're saying, hey, what is your assumption on appreciation rates? What is your assumption on interest rates? And what are your personal goals? And now I'm going to put a total cost analysis that puts that all together. Assumption on rates, assumption on appreciation, personal goals, and we're going to personalize that for you. So Dave, let's close this out. I want to remind folks that when you're presenting on Zoom, be thoughtful about your lighting, be thoughtful about your background. Make sure you remember the audience is your camera. The audience, like if you've got two screens, is not over here. So be thoughtful about having the best mic experience that you can have so that you're really connecting well with people. Dave, any other closing thoughts you have, either, data and insights or just knowing the kind of leadership we're bringing? Anything else you want to tell the mortgage coach community?
I think I'll go back to what we started with. Our job right now is to get this information out there. Even recently this week, there are stories of, folks coming out and saying, maybe you should wait to buy a home. Maybe you should do this. And certainly if somebody needs to do that for their situation, we want to help them do that. But we don't want them to do that if they're misinformed. So my encouragement would be, while this information, the danger right now is this information is known to you, and we know it in our business, or we anecdotally know it, and yet we don't share it with folks that are out in the market that don't know it and have questions. And so my call to action would be, don't let this information die with you. Don't let this information not get shared. And Dave, I think the best thing that anybody can do right now would be to partner with a great referral source and say, hey, let's get people together that you've talked to this year that are thinking about buying, thinking about selling, thinking about doing something, and let's get the truth in their hands so that they can make the best decision for their family.
Yeah, and I don't want to go down a rabbit trail on this, but I'm sure you were alluding to the Susie Orman article that came out last week or recently. And she basically kind of gave a global recommendation that, hey, you should wait until September or later to do a real estate transaction. And then she went on to describe the reasoning for that had some flawed logic. She either doesn't really know how things work, or it was a bad use case to make her example. And so, me personally, I don't know if I was doing this live event, I would want to shine a light on Susie and call her out, guys.
Sure.
But I'll leave that as a personal opinion, because there is an argument to say, hey, this is what one person said. Now let me just show you some, through some facts and insights. She may be right, waiting is better, but the logic she used wasn't data driven. Can
I respond directly to that, Dave? Because I think you're right about that, but I think there's a bigger issue there, because it really isn't about Susie, I would argue. Even though she did say that, and I think logically we can break that argument down and we can say, okay, this is why it's not true. But here's the bigger point. It underscores the fact that a thought leader, I believe, is having a hard time navigating this market. There are a lot of questions in this market that people have, need answers to, questions they have that they want answers to. And that's where I go back to, it's our job to bring those answers. And we see those questions pop up. I don't think her questions are too far off than what consumers are thinking, No.
Well, I think she did a good topic. And the point I want to make, the thing I disliked most about it, is it didn't address the personal aspect of this. So there is these, global issues, but then there's, what are your goals?
Yeah.
What are your assumptions? What city do you live in that you want to buy, sell, or become a first-time home buyer in? And so I think, real estate is in, we always say it's location, location, location. And I do not think, as a leader, I think we all want to come that it's location, 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 personalization, personalization, personalization. And there's so many thought leaders that are just getting out and talking nationally and making these global predictions that aren't local and they're not personal.
Yeah.
So mortgage coach community, you got a great opportunity. Dave, thank you for this leadership. Links to the slides down below. They will also be in the file section of our Facebook group, Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind. If you haven't subscribed to Mortgage Coach, make sure you do. But guys, more importantly, if you have not subscribed and tuned in to Keeping Current Matters, you have to. KeepingCurrentMatters.com. Also, they have a spectacular blog that should be among your daily reading, but being a member where you're getting like, hey, this month, here are the local, national, personal slides to help you be a leader as a realtor and a mortgage professional. every month they're giving it to you, and then they're spoon feeding how to present it, how to get the, they're giving you links to get the backup data so that that content is curated, and then you're educated so that you are smart. Like if you don't do their premium version, you have to it's harder to get smart about this stuff. So really do connect with the premium version. Anything else, if anyone wants to connect with you, Dave, any other ways to do it? Or
yeah, I mean, you can go to kcmblog.com and sign up for the blog. We'd love to have you do that. And anybody that wants to go and try it, we offer a free 14-day trial and go over there and check it out. So Dave, we're grateful for just the belief in what we both believe is that education today and forever wins. An educated consumer in our business wins. And so I'm grateful for you having us on, and as always, whatever we can do to help the mortgage coach community make these presentations, have the most current data, you can definitely count on us, and we're grateful for the partnership.
Thank you, brother. Remember, guys, share your slides, your success stories on this strategy down below. Dave Childers, this is a wrap. Appreciate you, my brother.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Take care, everybody.